What's up, Grizz Nation? Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, you are having a great weekend. Sean Coleman here with a special edition of Grizzly Bear Blues Live as part of the Grizzly Bear Blues and Bluff City Media podcast network. You can find all the great content from both of these great brands wherever they're represented across all forms of social media, and of course at bluffcitymedia.com. You can find myself at StatsSAC on Twitter. This special edition of Grizzly Bear Blues Live is, of course, the result of several sources of breaking news today regarding the Memphis Grizzlies, and unfortunately, as many know by now, none of them are positive. To start with, the most significant news of the day involves superstar point guard Ja Morant, and in another occurrence, another incident in a growing trend of incident regarding Ja Morant off the court. After last night's game between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Denver Nuggets, in which the Grizzlies lost in Denver, in the early morning hours, Ja Morant went live on Instagram Live, and during the live broadcast showed what appeared to be a weapon, a gun, and during the live broadcast. And as the morning progressed, many became aware of what had occurred, including the NBA itself. And it was announced that the NBA was looking into the incident and it would be investigated. And of course, the biggest significance, the overall significance that comes from this is just the latest negative incident centering on Ja Morant that has occurred. And it truly is a growing trend of concerning incidents. Over the past several months, there have been multiple reports of an incident that involved Ja Morant and a minor during a pickup basketball game. Another occurrence that involved Ja Morant and a local mall employee here in Memphis. There, of course, was, the stories that, came out about, what occurred after the Indiana Pacers and Memphis Grizzlies played a game here in Memphis in late January. And then this latest incident, involving Instagram Live and Ja Morant after last night's game in Denver. There's been a consistent trend of concerning incidents involving Ja Morant. And of course, many, have continued to have more and more questions about what exactly is going on. Well, now there has been, reaction. There has been a response to this growing trend of concerning incidents. It starts with the fact that it was announced today that Ja Morant would be away from the team. He is suspended, away from the team, however you want to word it. Ja Morant will not play in the next two games. He will not play for the rest of the Grizzlies road trip, which means that he's out for tomorrow night's game against the Clippers, and he's also out for Tuesday's game against the Lakers. But the significant thing, and proof that the right things are happening, the right moves are being made in response to this growing trend of unfortunate incidents, is the fact that this announcement was made by the team. The Grizzlies, not the league, the Grizzlies stepped in and stated that Ja Morant would be away from the team for at least the next two games. This news continued to evolve as the day has progressed. Ja Morant would later deactivate both Instagram and Twitter, which means that he would deactivated all forms of social media. And he also released a statement later on in the day. Ja Morant, in response to last night's incident after the game versus the Grizzlies and the Nuggets, stated, "I take full responsibility for my actions last night. I'm sorry to my family, teammate, coaches, fans, partners, the city of Memphis, and the entire Grizzlies organization for letting you down. I'm going to take some time away to get help and work on learning better methods of dealing with stress and my well-being and my overall well-being." So that came directly from Ja Morant itself. So while we know of him being out, he'll be out for at least the next two games. And again, if you want to call it a suspension, what have you, that's fine. But it does appear that this could extend, significantly beyond just the next two games, as Ja Morant starts to take the steps that he needs to get back on the right path. And that is really what stands out about what has occurred today and over the past several months. Not taking away at all from the magnitude of what has happened. All these events involving Ja Morant, they're definitely concerning. And the reason why they're concerning is because of, if they were to continue to occur, what they could lead to, what they potentially could do in a negative way to all that Ja Morant has built since he's been in the NBA. We're talking about Ja Morant being a beacon of positivity that he's been since he's been in the league. Not only for the Grizzlies, but the league itself. He's one of the most exciting players, one of the best players in the league. He also, for a young player, there has been so many moments, there's been so many instances in which Ja's current peers and former NBA players have bestowed such a positive opinion of Ja Morant. You typically do not see a young player held in such high regard by his peers and those that came before him in the NBA. That's the type of brand that Ja Morant has built up. I put the spotlight on Ja Morant being that beacon of positivity and his brand, because that's what could be at damage. That's what could be at stake if these incidents were to continue to occur. But it's not just his brand. It's not just his ability for earnings moving forward. Obviously, it's not just, what he means for the Grizzlies on the court and their eventual success and, where they hope to go in time. But most importantly, the focus is on himself. And that's why the responses that we have seen today from what occurred last night are steps in the right direction. All the avenues to negativity and noise, they've been removed. That's removing social media from the equation. That's removing basketball from the equation. That's Ja Morant taking full responsibility. All those steps have occurred. The Grizzlies have stepped in. They've helped remove those things from the equation. Ja has taken full responsibility, and from what we can see, that means that full focus is now on Ja doing what he needs to do to getting back focused, obviously, on where he is great, which is on the court, but most importantly, being the outstanding individual and just source of positivity, the great brand, and just a great person that he's been in time ever since he stepped foot on an NBA court and even before that. It obviously is definitely a concern of all these negative things that have occurred. But the good thing is that the immediate response to them seems to be steps in the right direction. Now, what does this ultimately mean? Time will tell. That's the big takeaway from today, is that there are still many uncertainties. It's not known how long Ja will be away from the team and away from the game of basketball. It's not known what eventually this will mean for the Grizzlies, who still obviously have a lot to play for this season. It's not known what this means beyond this season, in terms of, Ja Morant getting back to, being the superstar. I feel strongly that this is just simply going to be a wake-up call, and Ja Morant has taken the necessary steps to make it that. For him to be able to get back to the young superstar that we all have known to grow and love and enjoy in his time in Memphis. I think that's going to be the ultimate outcome. But the right steps have to be taken for that to be the outcome, and that's exactly what has taken place. So more clarity, a resolution, short-term and long-term, that's not going to be available today. And at this point in time, it's not known when that resolution may be available. But the right steps towards that resolution are being taken. And while the Grizzlies certainly have a lot to play for, at the end of the day, the most important thing is Ja taking the necessary steps he needs for himself to be able to get back on track with him being the superstar both on and off the court that this city has fallen in love with since he's been in the NBA. And hopefully, sooner rather than later, he'll be back better than ever, and he'll be back leading the Grizzlies on the court and obviously making the positive difference that he can off of it. The other news that came out today concerns Brandon Clarke. And in this situation, unfortunately, the breaking news is what many of us expected this afternoon. The team released a statement announcing that Brandon Clarke, who in last night's game, just a few minutes into him coming on the court last night, after making a free throw, Brandon Clarke unfortunately started favoring his left leg, fell to the floor, and held his left leg up, obviously showing that he could not put any weight on it. A non-contact injury. He was helped off the court. Later, as the game was going on, there were images showing that he was leaving the stadium on a golf cart with his left Achilles heavily wrapped in ice. And our worst fears came to fruition today. It was announced that Brandon Clarke, unfortunately, suffered a left Achilles tear last night in the game against the Denver Nuggets. This obviously means he will be out for the remainder of this season. But the even bigger news, unfortunately, is that, judging from past occurrences with Achilles tears that have impacted other NBA stars, he likely will be out for a significant portion of next season as well. And even more significant than that, if there is a part of the body in which you did not at all want to be impacted when it came to Brandon Clarke, the Achilles is about as important as it gets for his overall skill set because of how explosive, how dynamic, how athletic he is, how effective he is with his quick twitch movement, quick decisions on the move. All that is impacted by him having good lower body strength and great feet work, knowing what he can do on the move quickly. Unfortunately, the Achilles injury that has now occurred, it's not just that it's going to take, potentially more than a year to even come back on the court from that. It's when will Brandon Clarke be back to his current level of productivity in time? There's a good chance that may not be a possibility until after next year. That is the impact of this injury. And obviously, the focus is on Brandon Clarke. Everybody knows how important he is to this Grizzlies team. We'll discuss that in a moment. But the foremost focus is on Brandon Clarke himself. Obviously, getting a resolution to this significant injury that has occurred. Hopefully, he can have a quick surgery that will, offer, a full, recovery, or at least a full successful surgery on allowing for that tear to be taken care of to his Achilles. And then from there, he can start the road to recovery, a very direct, very planned out road to recovery that can allow for him to, in time, get back to where he is now. That is the hope. Unfortunately, right now, can that be guaranteed? When it comes to an Achilles injury, it's not very possible to be able to have a lot of clarity right now. The focus is that, yes, there certainly is a possibility Brandon Clarke can recover from this to eventually be, again, the player that he is now. But with the type of skill set that he has, it's going to take time for him to be able to heal. It's going to take time for him to be able to recover. And then even once he's back on the basketball court, it once again will take time for him to get back to the level that we have all come to love and enjoy during his time with the Grizzlies. And it makes it a huge loss. There's no way around it. Brandon Clarke and his consistency on both ends of the court is a huge loss for this Grizzlies team. And the reason why I mention his consistency is because of his versatility. He can be used in so many different lineups. He can be used in so many different schemes. He can be used in so many different ways to impact the game on both ends of the court. Just like we've seen over the past month, when it comes to Steven Adams and his skill set, you can't replace it. You've got to be able to come up with a different approach that hopefully will lead to the same level of success without Adams. Well, now the Grizzlies are going to have to do that once again with Clarke being out for an extended period of time. So the hope is certainly there for Brandon Clarke to have the obvious surgery that he needs. Hopefully the Achilles tear will be repaired and he'll be able to start the road to recovery sooner rather than later. And the hope is that in time he'll have a quick recovery. Brandon Clarke is a very well thought of, and for good reason, very well thought of person and player. Such a great guy to talk to. Always positive, always focused on the game, always focused on getting better. So without a doubt, once he's able, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be focused on getting back to his normal level of productivity, which is elite off the bench. He's one of the best bench scorers in the NBA, one of the most consistent shooters, one of the most consistent reserve scorers in the NBA, who played a big role for the Grizzlies. While it's going to be an extended period of time before the Grizzlies will be able to enjoy his contributions once again, hopefully in time, he'll get back to the level that all the Grizzlies fan base and the franchise have known to come and love and rely upon in big situations time and time again. Certainly wishing Brandon Clarke a healthy and speedy recovery from what is a very significant injury. And then the last news is news that was also expected, and obviously not to the level of what we've seen with John Morant and Brandon Clarke, but the news, did become official today. Dillon Brooks, in getting his 16th technical foul last night during the game against the Denver Nuggets, he now has officially earned a 1-game suspension which will take place tomorrow night against the Clippers. It happened at a time, I think it was an unnecessary technical. I know that there was, a pretty awesome article from ESPN that was released just yesterday about the style of play, the dedication that Dillon Brooks has to how he plays the game. And there are a lot of things that, some may not count as positive, but as Grizzlies fans, I feel, and those that cover the Grizzlies, I feel that it wasn't surprising, many of the things that were, discussed in that ESPN article on Dillon Brooks yesterday, just how committed to his craft Dillon Brooks is. But now, without Ja Morant being available for, what could be an extended period of time, obviously Brandon Clarke being out for, this year and a good portion of next, the focus for Dillon Brooks has to be certainly staying committed to what makes him so good on defense and what makes him so effective when he's on the court. But there has to be a heightened awareness of not putting himself in a position to where he will be unavailable for the Grizzlies. Because tomorrow night, the Grizzlies are going to be without Ja Morant. They're going to be without Brandon Clarke, Dillon Brooks, and Steven Adams. And it's going to be a hard mountain to climb for this Grizzlies team to get the victory. Yes, they've done it before. Yes, the Grizzlies have featured depth that has allowed for them to play effective basketball without some of their most important players in the past. But it certainly is going to be a tough hill to climb, and you have to hope for a split or even better. If the Grizzlies can get a split or even better over the next 2 games, I certainly think that will be considered an overall win. And this team will then head back to Memphis, and hopefully better news will be available in the coming days. So, without a doubt, a less than ideal day on many fronts when it comes to the Memphis Grizzlies, but that does not take away from the fact that actions that were needed have occurred today as well. When it comes to Ja Morant, this is highly significant and highly unfortunate that these incidents have occurred. But it is good to see that the necessary steps are being taken, that the necessary journey has started, both from Morant, from the organization, and those around Morant, to get him back to where he has been, back to being one of the best young stars of the NBA, one of the best brands in basketball, and for the city of Memphis, for the Grizzlies franchise, not only a superstar, but a beacon of positivity that has made the city, just absolutely love him from the beginning, and we know that that feeling is reciprocated. I don't think in any way, shape, or form this puts any doubt that there is obviously a lot of mutual love between Ja Morant, the Grizzlies, and the city of Memphis. The focus now is for those sources around Morant, his teammates, the coaching staff, the front office, the franchise, obviously, his friends and family. The focus is now those that care for Morant being there to help him get back on track to all that is available to him, which is absolutely a ton in terms of what he could accomplish both as a basketball player, as an individual, and for his brand. All those things are certainly things to focus on for Ja Morant, and it's good to see that he's taken the needed steps to remove the negativity and noise and focus on the positivity that has brought so much success to both him and the Grizzlies in his time in the NBA. While time will ultimately tell what comes from what has occurred over the past 24 hours and in the past few months, the hope is that it will be nothing but positive outcomes moving forward. And of course, with Brandon Clarke, nothing but the best to him. A speedy recovery. Hopefully, again, the surgery to repair the Achilles tear will happen soon. He'll be able to start the road to recovery. And I definitely think that he is fully capable of making a successful return to the court sooner than anybody expects. But for the Grizzlies moving forward, without Ja Morant in the short term, without Brandon Clarke in the short and long term, the focus remains on the fact that there's plenty to play for this season. That hasn't changed. The Grizzlies still have plenty to play for with where they are currently in the Western Conference standings. You do have some good news in the fact that Steven Adams will be returning in the near future. Hopefully Dillon Brooks will come back and he'll be able to have an extended period of time without there being any incidents that keeps him off the court. And the Grizzlies, hopefully in time, once Ja Morant takes care of everything he needs to, which of course is of most importance, hopefully in time, once Ja Morant returns, the Grizzlies will have all that they need in place to truly make the run that they want to this season. Some players that definitely are going to have to step up. Tyus Jones. You're going to have to see Santi Aldama and Xavier Tillman be consistent parts of the rotation now without Brandon Clarke being available. And the pressure also falls to Taylor Jenkins and his coaching staff. He's going to have to make the right calls, and he's going to have to continue to be creative with his lineup when it comes to putting which players in at what specific times to get the job done. It's obviously been a less than ideal day, but the hope is that moving forward, there will be nothing but positive outcomes that come from this, and the Grizzlies sooner rather than later will have all the pieces in place that they need on the court and off of it for them to continue to experience nothing but success. I feel few can deny that it's been a meteoric rise for the Grizzlies and Ja Morant during the time that Taylor Jenkins has been at the helm and Ja Morant has been the leader and superstar of this team. That hopefully will be what's going to happen moving forward, and that's the hope that we all have as time goes on. Certainly just a disappointing day on many fronts, but hopefully the Grizzlies in the coming days will start to get better news and we can all move forward and focus on what still could be a very special season for the Memphis Grizzlies. Of course, you can find all the great content and all the latest news that will be available from the situation with Ja Morant, from Brandon Clarke, from Dillon Brooks, and all things Memphis Grizzlies. You can find all that through Grizzly Bear Blues and Bluff City Media, wherever both brands are represented on social media. Plus, free on all podcast platforms. Wherever you choose to listen, that's where we'll be. You can get the latest content when it's available. Also, free on YouTube. Wherever you enjoy video content, that's where this podcast, as well as others, will be available. You can find myself at StatsSAC on Twitter, and all the great work and content from Bluff City Media at bluffcitymedia.com. Until next time, my name's Sean Coleman. Always a pleasure being with you. Go Grizzlies. We'll talk to you again soon here on Grizzly Bear Blues Live.